So for those watching on the VRCC stream and also those rejoining us from the Classic and Modern Motorsport Club Southern page, welcome along to Snetterton. Or welcome back to Snetterton for the first race of two today for the CMMC Southern Intermarque Silhouettes, which is very much a fantastic series. The best way to put it is that if you're a fan of short oval racing and you're familiar with the series National Hot Rods, essentially, in essence, these are National Hot Rods with windscreens that run on bigger circuits. I know they're probably not as simple as that, and there's probably some short oval races that are probably clawing at their screens saying you got that not entirely right, but even so, some brilliant cars here. All these cars are essentially space frame silhouette racers with race cars with silhouette bodies over the top. The silhouette of choice tends to be, for most of them, the Vauxhall Tigra, but there are some Mercedes SLK silhouettes and some Ginettas and others in between with a couple of Peugeots. Let's look through the grid. For qualifying this morning, it's Daniel Smith on pole position who will start in the Mercedes SLK. Alongside him, in the first of many Vauxhall Tigras, is Malcolm Blackman. Then it's Ray Harris in the Ginetta G40R. Yes, there's a Ginetta here, alongside Vauxhall and the Vauxhall Tigra with Lewis Smith. Then it's Mike Thurley in a Ginetta and Colin Smith in his Vauxhall Tigra. That rounds out the third row of the grid. Row 4 is the Mitsubishi Colt of Phil Young, and then the Mercedes SLK of Richard Smith. Rounding out the top 10 is going to be Mick Robertson and his VW Corrado, and Ruben Taylor in the Peugeot 206cc. Then we move backwards to row 6 with Danny Smith and his Vauxhall Tigra, and another Vauxhall Tigra with Philip Spinks at the wheel. That completes the 6th row of the grid. Row 7 sees Nigel Beardsmore in the Mercedes SLK, and then John Stewart in the Mercedes SLK alongside him. So two Mercedes on the 7th row of the grid. It's then Chris Ayling and Steve Burrows on the 8th row. Chris Ayling in the Tigra, Burrows in the Tigra as well. And we've got the last car on the grid being set on the 9th row car, the 17th car on the grid, Ian Hales in his Vauxhall Tigra as well. So the cars then make their way around the formation lap. It'll be a rolling start, the first of two 15-minute races here today, and some very experienced cars. Now, the one car I'm fascinated to see amongst all the Tigras and Peugeots and Mercedes SLKs are this pair of Ginetta G40Rs. Now, again, I should stress, they're not actually actual Ginettas, but they are Ginetta body shapes that have been put over these space frame race cars. So, great to see. Different shapes in the mix, but we've had a few more Peugeots, a couple of different cars in the mix, but the popular ones tend to be, as you see, half the field having, I think there's 11 Vauxhall Tigra bodied cars on this grid. There's about 4 or 5 Mercedes SLKs. We've got a couple of Peugeot 206cc's, the VW Corrado in there as well, which is also an old school kind of Intermarque silhouette shape. There it is, just towards the back of the top 10. I also could see a couple of the Peugeot 206cc's that we mentioned. Again, they're starting to become a bit more prominent and quite smart looking machines, but essentially for most of the field, if you want to get yourselves towards the front, it appears to be either a Vauxhall Tigra, a Mercedes SLK, or one of the two Ginetta G40Rs as well. So if they make their way through onto the formation lap, essentially this is for competitors participating in front engine silhouette saloon and sports coupe cars, and the general principle is that cars have body shells based on and are recognisable as those of mass-produced saloon and coupe cars. So essentially, all the underpinnings, if you like, for the car essentially all have to be the same to a certain extent, but the body shell can be within reason anything that you want to use. And of course, the common one appears to be the Vauxhall Tigra, which is used quite a lot, but you get some other ones which are created along the lines. There are a couple of classes. You've got cars that have, I think, there's cars that have a 4-speed gearbox, and also there's a class which have 5 and 6-speed gearboxes as well. So watch out for them as instead. So CMMC, who gave us great entertainment yesterday with their Super Saloons and TinTops from the Southern Division, two fascinating races that saw plenty of dramatic moments. We'll hope you see some more great racing. I'm certain with this 17-car entry for the CMMC Intermarque silhouettes from the Classic and Modern Motorsport Club's Southern Division. And so the cars now form up in 2x2 formation for the rolling start. And so just a reminder of the grid then, as the cars make their way up through Murray's on this lap then. So, reminder, it's going to be as they come onto the grid to get themselves underway. It's Mercedes versus Vauxhall at the front of the grid. So up to the right they come, Daniel Smith on pole in the Mercedes, Malcolm Blackman in the Vauxhall alongside the front row of the grid. Lights go out and we're racing for the Intermarque silhouettes here at Snetterton. Good start for the second row for Lewis Smith in the white Mercedes, and the Ginetta of Ray Harris, the green car on the inside, looks for third place on the inside of Lewis Smith in the white Vauxhall. Into turn one they go for the first time. Battle on between Mick Robertson and I think that's 14, that's Philip Spinks in the Vauxhall in his Tigra. Now out of the right-hander and down towards the Wilson hairpin for the first time. Under brakes and Malcolm Blackman's all over the shop. He's sideways. They're four abreast on the exit between the first two rows. I think both Lewis Smith and Ray Harris both squeezed past Daniel Smith and Malcolm Blackman as a result of that. Malcolm Blackman completely outbraked himself, slid fairly wide at the hairpin, all over the shop, and he's possibly dropped down to fourth, out of the left-hander at Palmer. They're all over each other, the top four. Here they go, down towards the left-hander. Ray Harris under brakes in the Ginetta, up the inside of Daniel Smith. Here comes Lewis up the inside into the back of Ray Harris into the hairpin. Goodness me, three corners in, they're at it already. Fantastic stuff. So top four altogether. The second of those Ginettas is in their fifth position. I'll quickly remind myself of who that is. So the other Ginetta is at the wheel of Mike Thurley, and I think he was out earlier on in a Vauxhall, his Ford Escort and the modified Ford, so he's the one to watch for. But Ray Harris wasting no time, straight into the lead here in the Ginetta, but it's Vauxhall, Mercedes, then Mike Thurley's Ginetta as they turn their way out of Williams and onto the Bentley Straight for the first time. Some fantastic looking race cars, these Intermarque silhouettes, brilliant to see. It's always a treat when they have one a weekend like this, so fantastic work, and thank you to CMMC Southern for bringing them along this weekend at Snetterton. Some side-by-side effort here. This is Mike Thurley battling away with the 49. That's the 491. That's Colin Smith in the Peugeot 206. No, sorry, Ruben Taylor in the Peugeot 206cc. Turn their way through the right hand. There was a couple of cars I think that didn't make it to the start of the race, because I think we had 20 cars qualify, but only 17 take the start, which is a shame to see, but hopefully we'll get them out for race 2 later. But Ray Harris, then the Ginetta, leads them out of the final corner of Murray's to the end of lap 1. Again, 15 minutes of racing, so not long to go, but these cars can lap pretty quickly in the low 2-minute threes around this circuit. So should get round about roughly 7 or 8 laps here in this first race before lunch. So Harris leads, Lewis Smith in second place, Malcolm Blackman third, Daniel Smith fourth. It's Ruben Taylor in fifth now, ahead of Mike Thurley. Sixth place there is car number 16. That is it's 491, which is the Colin Smith car. So it says 16 on the side. It's showing as the car that came across the line. That was the 16 car. That's Burrows. So Burrows, I don't think he's not showing on the qualifying results. So I think he must be either missed off the result, or so he just happens up the inside. Malcolm Blackman tries to get through. Krissy Taylor, meanwhile, has had a premature end to his race. But Malcolm Blackman, we thought that Wes Payne was Mad Max. He's certainly kind of driving like the quite extreme there. Up the inside goes Daniel Smith to get through. So Malcolm Blackman all over the shop trying to get past Lewis Smith, and then Daniel Smith gives him a bit of backup in the Mercedes. Up the left-hander, there's the 21 car. That's the Mitsubishi Colt of Philip Young. He's currently sat at the moment in 9th place. And we've got Burrows left coming up next in the Tigra. Just looking at the numbers, and Burrows wasn't listed on the grid on the. Sorry, he was the 16th on the grid. So Burrows has come through from 16th on the grid to pick up where he currently is at the moment in 8th position. He's passed half the field in about 1.5 laps, which is pretty extraordinary. Turning through, we've got the Colt there of Philip Young. He's been chased down by a couple more Tigras. One of them is car 491. Well, it's the 490 he's trying to chase now. That's Danny Smith. And then we've got the very extraordinary kind of blue and pink car. That's the 68 car, I think, of Oak Bolton. So he's just behind him. So lots of battles going on as they come up the pit straight to end the second lap. So Harris then still in control in the Ginetta. Then it's the Vauxhall Tigra. Lewis Smith with the bodywork flapping around on the approach towards the right-hander. Then we've got Mercedes and Vauxhall. There's Malcolm still in 4th place, still throwing that car around and diving around looking for moves. Taylor 5th, Burrows 6th, Hales is 7th, there's Mike Thurley 8th, and it's 2 more Smiths in 9th. It's the Colin Smith in 9th position, and then the Danny Smith in 10th position, Eric Bolton 11th. Ray Harris stretching out that advantage. It's a really pretty car, the GSG 40R Intermarque silhouette. And Ray Harris is driving it superbly as he turns out through Agostini for the third time. Oh, big move up the inside for Lewis Smith on Danny Smith. So I think Lewis Smith is actually he's in a Mercedes rather than an actual Tigra. So the two Mercedes then going wheel to wheel. And it looks like it's going to be Lewis ahead of Danny as he holds on. Danny goes back up the inside to make the move into Oggies. They go side by side with Malcolm Blackman in fourth place, getting a fantastic view of it all as they turn out of Oggies. Now towards the right hand at Williams. Oh, is that Lewis with a problem? Did he fault about? No, I think he faulted a little bit, and that gave a prime chance for Malcolm Blackman to say, "Excuse me, Lewis," up the inside, yoink, and up to the third place he goes. So a move for Malcolm Blackman to take third, and all of this is just to the benefit of Ray Harris, who continues to extend that advantage. Crossed the line last time. He was 2.8 seconds to the good ahead of the trio scrapping over second, third and fourth, but through they go through Brundle and Nelson, Danny Smith, Malcolm Blackman and Lewis is getting very lurid on the exit of Nelson through the bomb hole, and again just swings the car through. It's a brilliant camera angle to watch the cars from the rear, just watch the cars moving around and compressing and bottoming out and just swinging through the long right hander. It's a brilliant thing to watch. Turn back in through the complex of Core and then through Murray's again, and Blackman will now try and close that gap into second place man Daniel Smith. Harris continues to lead though, puts a 2-minute 2.489 into the books. Fastest lap of the race, meanwhile, just to double check that in, so far has gone to Ray Harris. Who else? 2 minutes 2.489. So Ray is currently lapping at fastest lap pace at the moment. Gap is up to 3.4 seconds from Daniel Smith. That's Malcolm Blackman, who has closed in, and Lewis Smith just arrives behind him. These guys really are that confident on the brakes. They just absolutely charge as late as they dare onto the brakes, and then just try and sort out the consequences later, which is quite extraordinary. But as I say, these cars are, I'd say, at the very least, very much akin to the national hot rods that you see on the short ovals, and pretty much they are very much akin to them, just albeit versions essentially with windscreens and are kind of more suited to the longer circuits. And any time they do go out onto the longer circuits, they're usually pretty entertaining, as they are right now. We're just coming up to half distance in this first race. Daniel Smith there, just all arms and elbows, working away at the wheel of that Mercedes SLK silhouette. And Simon Burrows, who started way back in, what was it, 16th position, is already up into about 5th or 6th now. So where is his next car on the shot? There he is, in the Vauxhall Tigra. There he goes. Next is then Ian Hales in his Tigra. You've then got the Ruben Taylor Peugeot 206 going through in 7th place. Mike Thurley should be next. There he goes, in the second of the two Ginetta G40Rs. Like a busy boy this weekend. He's had already 2 races in the modified Ford series, and now he's got one more of those today, as well as the first of these 2 Intermarque Silhouettes races. So good to see Mike out in getting his money's worth this weekend with 5 races in total. There goes the Mike Thurley car. And out to the right hander he goes, up through the gears. He's got a bit of a gap on Smith, which there are many Smiths in the field. There's about 3 or 4, about 5 Smiths. There's Richard Smith, Colin Smith, Daniel Smith, Danny Smith and Lewis Smith. I'm not sure, I don't think they're all related. I think most of them are, but not all of them are related to each other in terms of the surname. So Malcolm Blackman sets the new fastest lap of the race, which immediately gets bettered by Steve Burrows. So, and then Daniel Smith then meets it, and Daniel Smith is back in, where is he now? In 7th or 8th position, so a little bit further back. So the fastest lap now, as it changed 3 or 4 times, has now gone to, if I can correct myself on it, it's now gone to, oh no, it has gone to Daniel Smith in 2nd place. It just updated late on the screen. So Daniel Smith has taken the fastest lap of the race. I think he was probably calculated a bit later because his transponder was a bit late to confirm the time. So Daniel Smith then, 2 minute 1.844. He's got the gap down to 2.7 seconds. So it's not all going plain sailing for Ray Harris in terms of having the race winning pace, because Daniel Smith in the second half has managed to keep some decent heat and gripping his tyres. He's going to try and close in. Still looking at Mike Thurley's example. It's really nicely prepared Ginettas. I remember reading there was a decent article about them being put together in Motorsport News quite a while ago, and they were quite impressed at some of the how quickly they were taking not just the Intermarque scene, but also to within national hot rods. They're becoming so popular with their with the quite decent aerodynamic shape, and have becoming quite advantageous and quite a strong shape, and that could become the new favourite in terms of taking over from the Tigra one day at least. 196, which is the Tigra of York. And just behind him, we've got another one of the Smiths who are trying to close in. So there's Ray Harris, race leader. Quite small wheels on these cars as well. They're not very big, but they're all slicks as well, so they get quite an insane amount of grip in these very lightweight space frame race cars. And of course, you've got on top of that some very strong thing. Now there's a board being held out. Is that a penalty for somebody? Who's that for? Right, time penalty for car 24. 5-second time penalty, which has gone out to Lewis Smith in the Vauxhall. Well, he says Vauxhall Tigra on the screen. It's actually, I know it's a Mercedes SLK. So he's been given a 5-second time penalty for track limits. So Lewis Smith then, who currently sits in 5th position, car 24. He's got at the moment, he's only 2 seconds ahead of Ian Hales, who is in his own Vauxhall Tigra. So that to me would say that if it stays as it is, then Ian Hales will inherit 5th position and Lewis will drop down to 6th. So there's Malcolm Blackman in 3rd place, keeping Daniel Smith in tow, keeping him in his sights as they both try to close down Ray Harris's lead at the moment. Another new fast lap of the race for Daniel this time by 2 minutes 1.319, so the gap is back down to 2.3 seconds, but still just trying to edge it further down if he can. But Ray appears to have it all under control at the moment, so it's Ginetta, Mercedes, Vauxhall, out of Williams, down the back straight towards the complex at Brundle and Nelson. There is another one of the SLKs, that's 175. So just confirm the driver. That's John Stewart in his SLK. He's back down in 15th position as the leaders make their way out of Brundle and Nelson. A bit further back, that's the SLK of Lewis Smith. He's now being caught by Ian Hales in P6. I think if I'm right, I'm sure I'll be corrected, but that looks very similar to one of the Simpson cars, which used to be run by the Simpson team, the Simpson racing team, a few years ago before they went into the BTCC. Harris continues to lead there. What's the gap this time by? It's now it's gone out again by 0.6 of a second. I saw that Daniel Smith was getting a little bit ragged towards the end of that lap, and that's going to give Malcolm Blackman a chance to get back into contention. Gap is at 0.8 of a second between 2nd and 3rd, so watch for that to come down a bit more. There's still, including this lap, 2 more laps to go, because the faster laps are some 2 minutes 6 or so in this in race trim. Sorry, the fastest 2 minutes 1. There's a big 4-car battle going on here, those that came across the line. That's being led by Ruben Taylor's in there. You've got, I think Hales, Smith, the two of them, they've got Hales, Danny Smith, Mike Thurley, and Ruben Taylor. So yeah, Danny Smith is in there ahead of Hales. Then you've got Ruben Taylor's Peugeot, and then you've got Mike Thurley's Ginetta that's dropped back a couple of places, holding station to 9th now. He will try and keep touch with them if he can. There, meanwhile, is the... So that's the Ian Hales Tigra in what's currently showing as 6th position. So the other car that's in that mix looks to be... it's the 196 of York, so... couple of Vauxhall... so many Vauxhall Tigras trying to work out which one's which with the numbers. So it's Dave York who is in that group as well. We're looking at the battle of a second now as Blackman continues to pressure Daniel Smith as they turn in. Love the way those cars just move and glide through the corner. And Daniel Smith think, oh, Daniel Smith's got a problem. There's a bit of bodywork or something that's smoky on the left rear of that car. Just noticed it as it was coming out. There's a bit of dust that got cleared out. Now whether that was, I thought it was a bit of dust got kicked up, but there is something rubbing. I'm sure there is on the left or right rear of that Mercedes, and he's pulling in. Daniel Smith, I think he's got some kind of a problem or a puncture. Daniel Smith, just before the final lap of the race, is in the pit lane with a problem. So that brings Michael Blackman in for up to second place, and everyone else will sweep through. It will put Steve Burrows, Simon Burrows, up into 3rd place incredibly, and he started practically from the back of the grid. Steve Burrows from the back of the grid, 16th place he started, is up into what is now a podium place incredibly. Now, there's also, I saw, a ball going out again, and it said 10-second penalty. Is that another penalty now? It is. So that's another 10-second penalty. Another penalty now for Lewis Smith. His penalty's gone up to 10 seconds for track limits. So he kept on transgressing, so therefore he gets another penalty on top of that. So his penalty is become stronger. So 10 seconds now is the time penalty for Lewis Smith. Everyone else goes pouring through, but poor Daniel Smith, who was looking in such good form to potentially take a strong second place, now having to reside the fact that he's out of the race. And is that Steve Burrows struggling? Oh, Steve Burrows is struggling as well now. Out of the Agostini hairpin, the car suddenly slows. So Steve Burrows, from what was 16th to 3rd, is now possibly not even going to make the end of the race. So no one wants to challenge Ray Harris or Malcolm Blackman, because the pair of them are now on their own together, separated by 3 seconds. So that means to say that Lewis Smith, who's currently 4th, well, Lewis Smith is currently 4th. He'll be 3rd going past Steve Burrows, and even then, he's more than 10 seconds ahead of the next car. Extraordinary stuff in the CMMC Intermarque silhouette. No one seems to want to finish the race. Well, not at least anyone who could get up the podium, but still, Ray Harris looks like he's going to carry on to the flag, as will Malcolm Blackman. So it should now be Lewis Smith in 3rd place, which it is. There he is. Car 24 in... Even the front doesn't look like it, a Mercedes SLK. This looks like a Ginetta, and it is going like one. But look at how Malcolm Blackman's closed in right at the end here. Down the pit straight for the final time. Malcolm Blackman really closes in towards the end. But it's going to be a victory for the Ginetta of Ray Harris in the first CMMC Intermarque silhouette race. Picks up the victory, and he was closed down. He did 2 minutes 4.4 at the end. He was closed down by some, what was that, 2.5 seconds in the end by Malcolm Blackman. They only finished about 0.6 of a second between each other. So, because of Daniel Smith's demise, and then Steve Burrows retiring, and despite the 10-second penalty, Lewis Smith will come across the line, in what I suspect is coast mode, in 3rd place. Across the line he goes, and even he was backing off, well, that car wasn't sounding healthy either. So, but yeah, looking at the gap, so it's 10 seconds. So, no, sorry. So whether, okay, so Daniel Smith did keep. Okay, so I'm a bit confused there. I thought Daniel Smith had retired. There's Steve Burrows, who stopped on the road. He got going. He carried on until, looks like, the end of the Bentley Straight. So Daniel Smith did carry on going through. So he actually maybe either went straight through the pits or had a quick wheel change. Either way, he does carry on and take 3rd. Forgive me. So Daniel Smith is 3rd. Dave York is 4th. Ruben Taylor 5th. And then Lewis Smith ends up 6th, because they were actually that close enough to catch you within that 10-second margin. So it turned out, whilst I thought that Daniel Smith had faltered towards the end, he hasn't. So, and whatever issue he had was corrected pretty quickly. So it might have been because there was something I wonder if there was a piece of bodywork that was rubbing on the tyre. They've quickly brought it in. They've pulled the bodywork away, and he's carried on with enough of a gap to not be affected too much. But we'll have to possibly wait and see before the second race gets underway later. But the last few cars will just come through to pick up the finish. Here comes Dave Stewart's Mercedes SLK. The positions were all sorts were happening the last few laps, and it was changing the order of the race a little bit quicker than I could really keep up in some cases, but or try and work out. But we managed to figure it out that it was possibly a minor issue, which only saw Daniel Smith stop briefly before going back out from the pit lane. The other car to come through to finish is going to be another one of the SLKs, and that is going to be the 59 car coming up to the checkered flag, and that is going to be Nigel Beardsmore, his silver Mercedes, across the line to complete the finishes from our first CMMC Southern Intermarque silhouettes race here at Snetterton. Their second race is going to come up later on this afternoon, roughly in around, hopefully timetabled at around 10 to 5, so be sure to stick around for that and be around on the CMMC Southern Facebook page as you've been watching now for the second race coming up later on. So, final race before lunch, and here's the provisional result. Ray Harris, after a quite crazy and entertaining CMMC Avon Tyres Intermarque Silhouette Series race, wins in the Ginetta from Malcolm Blackman's Vauxhall. Daniel Smith 3rd after he pitted late on, and Dave York, Ruben Taylor and Lewis Smith ending up 6th after a time penalty. Mike 37th, it's then Young 8th, Smith 9th and Robertson 10th, then Philip Spinks, John Stewart, Ian Hales and Nigel Beardsmore, and we lost, unfortunately, Steve Burrows, Danny Smith, Eric Bolton, Richard Smith and Chris Ayling in the earlier race. So, for those watching on the BRCC and CMMC streams, thanks for watching this afternoon. Be sure to stick around as we're going to take a lunch break and also cover the have the Culverhouse Trophy qualifying take place. We'll come back with our first race after lunch, being the KTM 310R Championship. Until then, go and get yourselves refueled, get yourselves back in place, and we should be in place in roughly round about, I'd say, possibly about an hour's so time. So until then, take care, and we'll see you shortly for more action from Snetterton here with the BRSCC.